In this episode, we'll cover point number 7 of W. Edwards Deming's 14 Points for Management. Point number 7, adopt and institute leadership. Now, there's 5 lessons I take away from this. And the first is that an effective executive needs to be able to remove barriers. Now, what does that mean? I've worked with a number of contact centers around the world. And one of the biggest problems that I have when we're looking and building a system map is the people, the agents, sometimes in order to answer a question, require them to get into a different IT system. Now, there are all types of rules and organizations. If you're in this department, which the contact center agents are typically the low man on the totem pole, so to speak, and because they're not allowed access to certain things. And one of those things typically is IT. So many organizations find it very useful for a contact center agent to get a call, need access to information, have to call somebody else, put the customer on hold in order to get that information from another IT system. That is an example of an executive needing to remove a barrier to be able to provide value and service to a particular customer. So hopefully you understand that. Lesson 2, trust the employees that you hire. There are, now think about this, and I know some people are going to flip out when I say this, but you go into some of these organizations and the security is like you're going into a maximum security prison, where you have to walk through metal detectors and this and that because they're afraid you're going to steal stuff. So how much money are you going to spend? Just think about this. How much money are you going to spend to ensure an employee doesn't steal, let's say if you're in telecommunications, an iPhone? There's millions, sometimes in some cases, depending on the size of the company, billions is spent on, trying to get employees, make sure that they go by the rules and things of that sort. And it's costing you a lot of money. How much money? Maybe even enough money in there that maybe if you hired employees that met the qualifications that would allow you to trust them, that you wouldn't need all this stuff. Just a thought, because everybody's always looking for a cost. But to me, you've got to be able to trust your employees. In our software-heavy companies, this typically isn't a problem, but sometimes it is. Lesson number 3. And this comes from Deming originally, but I want you to listen to the nuance I have on this, which is Deming said that you shouldn't try and make decisions about the work, that you need to know the work, I guess is the bottom line of Dr. Deming if you're in management. And at the time, GM and Ford and Chrysler and so forth were hiring in college graduates into their organizations, and they became supervisors. Well, they didn't know anything about the work that they were supervising. So a lot of his emphasis was on that. Now, I'm going to take this a step further, and I'm going to say, don't make decisions about work you don't have knowledge of. Now, you might have had knowledge of it. Maybe you started in the contact center 10 years ago, or on the front line, or in sales, or whatever, a long time ago. You can't make any assumptions that any of that is even useful today. Things change so fast and so rapidly, and regardless, you need instant information. So the translation of this is workers need to make the decisions. And if we go back to the first lesson I talked about just a minute ago, your job as an executive and to become an effective executive is to remove the barriers so that workers can make good decisions about their job and what they're doing. I know this runs counter. This is why I have steps in my education program to take you through, because you almost have to be handheld in order to become an effective executive through a process, through a method in order to get you there. Lesson 4, look at the system first. Now, what do I mean? First thing that happens, and this is a knee-jerk reaction, especially more in the U.S. than anywhere, but certainly around the world too, is the knee-jerk reaction is something goes wrong, we have a problem, we have an error, we look to blame the worker. Well, that's Jim. Yeah, it always happens with Jim. Maybe Jim is an outlier. But before we place blame, I want you to think in terms of that 95% of the performance of your organization is down to the system that you work in, and only 5% attributable to an individual or a special cause or event. And so let's not seek blame, seek to understand the system. And again, you must understand your system in order to become an effective executive. And 95% is just a number. From my observation, Dr. Deming used 94%, but I think the point is made that problems and errors are coming from your system. Look there first. Lesson 5, you cannot be an effective executive if you are data illiterate. Now, what do I mean by that? Oh, I look at data all the time. I see executives, they pour through Excel spreadsheets and data all over the place, and a lot of time wasted too. If you do not understand variation, you are data illiterate. Now, this is my system, so those are the rules I set. If you're going to be an effective executive, you must understand variation. You must have general knowledge of statistical process control and using a time series amount of data and chart it and understand what control limits are and things of that sort. Now, here's the honest truth. Worked with organizations all over the world. About 1 in 100, maybe 1 in 50, somewhere between there. 1 in 50, 1 in 100 executives that I've worked with before I started working with them understood variation, that they use control charts. And then people go, well, I can't compete, Well, here's your chance to compete. If it's that low, then you, as an aspiring executive, have an opportunity to learn skills that can be useful to your organization and create value. If you're a new executive, then again, if you're trying to create value in your new organization or your new position, here's an opportunity to create value. If you're a veteran executive, shame on you. You should have understood about variation long before this. And it doesn't matter whether you're in manufacturing or service industry. These are basics. Now, that you can go very deep in this, and I understand, but you should understand the basics, because a lot of the data that you're looking at over time needs to be put on a statistical process control chart. And you ought to at least have some knowledge to know when you need to get help. How's that? And what you're seeing and questions that need to be asked. So this will come in my training later. And again, it's a hierarchy of things to build in my executive education program. But you start by understanding your system first and what its needs are. All right. You can go to the95method.com/starter kit. And there are 5 videos to give you a sense of what this is all about. The point number 8 will be coming out relatively soon. Please subscribe and hit the bell. And when it comes out, you'll be notified, and as well as the other 7 points or 6 points beyond number 8 that I'll be releasing.